Okay, here's my audience. Catch you?
Yeah.
Alright. Okay, my name is Jason Rhodes, and I'm an Alpha State Ag Tech major, and I kind of major in dairy, and I'm here today to talk to you about mastitis in dairy cows. Biggest part of mastitis is preventing it, and the best time to prevent mastitis is during the dry period, which is pretty much the start of the lactation. And a lot of guys like to do is they dry treat their cows, which is just an infusion into the teat of antibiotic. And this is an example of Quartermaster is an example of a product used to infuse the teat with. And what you do is you remove this cap here, and you make sure the cow is milked out, and then you inject the cow with this, and hopefully that keeps the cow from getting mastitis, especially in the first week, because in the first week they're going to swell up with milk because they're not going to completely dry off yet, because they go from getting milked and then just not getting milked anymore. So they're still going to be lactating, and when you dry them off, they still lactate, and they're going to leak a little bit. And when they leak, any bacteria can get up in that teat canal, because the teat canal opens up. So that using dry cow treatment will ensure that you don't get mastitis. And then a lot of people like to use teat sealants, which is a lot like your dry cow treatment. But what it does is it seals the teat opening, and it can either be injected with a syringe like this, or you can dip the outside of the teat and it just covers it with like a silicone covering, and that'll protect it for at least that week where they might leak. And then bedding has a lot to do with mastitis control too, because the wet bedding will house bacteria, and bacteria, if the cow leaks or has wide teat openings, that bacteria can get up in there through the bedding and just cause an infection, and that infection will lead to mastitis. And according to Dan N. Walder of Oklahoma State University, teat should be cleaned thoroughly before injecting any kind of teat treatment into them, because there'd be bacteria on the end of that teat. And when you infuse the teat, when you stick the injection up in there, you'll force bacteria up into the teeth along with your injection, and that could possibly cause an infection. And, so bedding is huge. Keep your cows clean, keep them dry, and keep that bacteria to a minimum. And another way to check after cows calve and you start milking them again is to use a CMT test, which is a paddle, and you take that paddle, and they make a special mix that you squirt each quarter into a separate compartment in the panel, and you use that mix to it. And when you mix it together, any quarters that have possible infection or mastitis will turn to jelly, and you can pinpoint those quarters before you even see the mastitis, and you can treat it right away so that you can reduce the loss of production, and that helps out a lot. And you can also use somatic cell scores, and somatic cell score is the score of the white blood cells in milk. And the more white blood cells you have, the more chance of bacteria you have, because the white blood cells attack the bacteria and kill it. So if you have a lot of white blood cells, you possibly have a mammary infection. And kind of the scale of somatic cell scores would be a good spot to reach would be 200,000 parts, or 200,000 cells in a unit of milk. And anything above that, you have an infection. Anything below that, you're pretty safe. And back to bedding. Most beddings they use are organic, like sawdust or hay or paper, but those can easily get wet, and the more wet environment you have, the better chance of bacterial growth. And so using inorganic bedding such as sand or limestone will reduce the chance of bacterial growth. And according to New York State Cattle Health Assurance, that's definitely the case. they say use a lot more inorganic bedding than organic bedding, and that'll reduce your chances of mastitis. And if you do catch a case of mastitis and treating mastitis, a lot of it's done with antibiotics, which is almost the same as dry cow treatment. It comes in the same syringe, but it's just treatment. And you withhold the milk for 72 hours, and hopefully that clears up the mastitis. And then you can put them right back in the tank, and they can keep being productive. And according to GCA Farm Technologies, using teat dip before and after, which is usually an iodine solution or some type of peroxide, you dip them before you put the milker on, and that kills the bacteria. You clean it off, and then you attach the milker. And as soon as that milker comes off, you have about 30 seconds before that teat canal closes up. And if that teat canal closes up without some kind of barrier or protecting against bacteria getting in there, there's a good chance to get mastitis. So if you get that teat dipped with iodine or peroxide, within that 30 seconds, you can really enhance your chances of reducing mastitis. And another way to cut down on mastitis is to breed to bulls specifically for mastitis prevention. And those bulls, they take the bulls and they have daughters, and then they figure out what the mastitis control is according to their daughters' somatic cell averages. And if their daughters have a low average of somatic cell, then they score that with the bull. And then reliability is a big thing too. So if the more daughters they have, the higher the reliability of their mastitis score. And according to Select Sires, which is a leader in dairy genetics, they say a score of 3 or less on the mastitis, the somatic cell scale, will hopefully in the future decrease your risk of mastitis through cows that have a less chance of getting mastitis. And probably the lowest bull in the scale runs around like a 2.5 in mastitis, and the highest bull runs like a 3.3. And you will find a lot of bulls that are lower than 3 on the scale, so you really have a big option to breed with. But so the more you can control mastitis, the more productive your herd will be. And if you have a lot of mastitis, then you're going to be losing money because you have to treat them, and you lose their milk. Because usually when you treat them, you use antibiotics, and you can't ship antibiotics in the milk because it's harmful to people. So the more you can control mastitis really without having to treat it, the more profitable your dairy farm is going to be through just producing milk without having trouble. And the less infection a cow will have, the more milk they'll produce, because the infection will cut down on the milk production too, because a lot of times that'll make them sick, and then they won't eat, and that leads to milk production. And if they're sick, you're just not going to produce any milk, whether you have clinical signs of mastitis or not. So really, in conclusion, controlling mastitis is the key to positive milk production and profit. Here's my audience.
Perfect.
Again, my name is Jason Rhodes, and that was my speech. How do you stop?